All right, what's up, world? This is Troy Pryor, founder of Creator Cypher. We are a multi-service entertainment company focusing on producing various forms of media, including TV, film, podcasts, and live events. Now, throughout the year, we also produce outreach programs and other programs to help empower the community and create platforms for diverse voices. Now, as a former athlete, I've had my share of injuries. I know the importance of letting your body heal and recover properly from physical trauma, and why it's important to allow our bodies to heal. But even more important than that, we also need to think about our mental states and our mental health as well. So tonight, we're very happy to have an amazing panel of artists and speakers to talk about their experiences. And tonight, we're joined by the super sister, Dr. Gloria Chance. She's a holistic and peak performance psychologist, author, and entrepreneur, and one of the leads of a new brand called Max Black Media that we're really excited about seeing what happens next. So she will be guiding our conversation today. And without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, put your virtual hands together for the one and only Dr. Gloria Chance.
Hey there, Troy.
Hey, how you doing? Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having us. This is such an important conversation, so I can't wait to get on with it.
Absolutely. Appreciate you. All right. So I'm going to peace out and looking forward to the conversation.
Thank you, Troy. And hello, everyone, and welcome to the Mental Health and Black Artists Creating Through Trauma Part 1 of a 3-part series. This is an event that has been developed in partnership, as Troy mentioned, with Creator Cypher in association with Troy Pryor, Max Black Media, African American Art Alliance, and the Gary International Film Festival. Now, we have all been talking about and having these conversations about mental health. And, you know, we want to evolve and grow from these conversations. And so we've created a series focused on those who have to navigate the challenges while still having to perform for an audience in some way. Now, we all know that we all have to do some type of performing, no matter what industry we're in. The artist community, however, they're special because they continue to believe and use their imagination to create long after their parents take away that ability. And I just want to mention that at 2 years old, if you have children, we generally start saying no, we start giving them a lot of rules, and that stops their imagination. And why is imagination important? It's important because imagination allows us to do more than just daydream. It allows us to create new ideas, and it helps us visualize how we can achieve whatever the next great thing is in our lives. So I'm a creativity and imagination specialist, and I really encourage you to listen and learn tonight as we look at how these artists are charting ways and being pioneers so that we can all thrive through their art that is imitating life, the real life in Black America. And so first in the series, we're going to speak to the panelists, and we're going to talk about their individual trauma and how they kind of navigate using their imagination and creativity even through the trauma. The second panel, we're going to explore how art and trauma impacts the artist at a community level and how it impacts our community. And then third, we're going to explore how art and trauma impacts the business side of the artist world. And again, we hope that these conversations provide insight and wisdom that can be applied to your own life. So stay tuned as we expand the conversation after this 3-part series wraps up. So, as James Baldwin says, if you're avoiding reality, how can you face it? So these artists on the panel, because they've maintained their imagination, they're keeping it real and they're keeping their lives real. And I think they can be a great example of what we can all do. So let's get started. These amazing panelists, you know, many of us don't even go to therapy, but they're actually going to be talking about their therapy and trauma, not in private, but live publicly. And I just want to acknowledge their bravery for sharing their story and their experiences and speaking their truth. And so I first like to introduce Ariel Marie. Ariel is a licensed professional counselor and owner of REJ Enterprises. And she enjoys helping artists, entertainers, and athletes navigate mental health, identity, and performance. Welcome, Ariel.
Thank you. Thank you. So happy to be here.
You are very welcome. And then next up, we're going to meet Anthony L. Williams, and he's a native of Rock, Arkansas, and the founder of Second Glance Productions. And Anthony Williams is an award-winning storyteller who is now living in Chicago. Hello, Anthony.
Hello, I'm so happy to be here.
Yes. And then next we have Jamal Joseph. And Jamal is an Oakland, California native. And he was raised in a family of entertainment with his father as a professional musician and entertainer. He developed the gifts of singing and dancing. I know amazing work on this panel. Hi, Jamal.
Hey, thank you so much for having me.
You are welcome. And then last but not least, we have Chantel Siobhan, and she's a proud Chicago native. You see the theme here, all these people from Chicago. Chantel is a creative entrepreneur and rising multi-hibernate, which I don't know what that means, director, writer, producer, and actor who brings the wildly embarrassing, adventurous, provocative, haunting, and otherworldly stories from her imagination to the screen, all while thrusting the full and nuanced lives of Black characters to center her stories. Hi, Chantel.
Hey, oh my God, my intro was so long. Thank you.
Exactly. So sorry about that. But thank you. Very interesting. And welcome, everyone. And so now let's get started. And I do want to say again how much I appreciate you, and I hope the audience appreciates you sharing some things that you may not have shared publicly before. And we know mental health is not mental illness, and people get that confused. Yeah. So when we're talking about mental health, we're talking about being able to thrive and to be the best person that we can be. But we also know that, we all have trauma. And so that's what we're going to talk about. Like, how do you use your trauma to create this concept of art that is imitating life, and how that helps you heal yourself and potentially heal others. And so as we start, Ariel, given that you're a mental health professional, let's go ahead and on a general level break down what trauma is, because we know that that our bodies, most people don't know that actually, our bodies carry our trauma. Yeah. And oftentimes that trauma is passed down through generations, through the stories that reside in our imagination that we keep repeating over and over in our minds. And then it creates behaviors that we don't understand or that we don't know how to stop. So can you talk a little bit about what trauma is specifically? And you're muted.
The common thing. A great book that talks a lot about, just like you said, trauma being manifested in the body, is the body keeps the score, right? So it's the idea that when something traumatic happens to us, our body or our mind may try to compensate for that. So it often just puts us in survival mode. So that's why sometimes we may forget certain memories that happened in childhood that were traumatic, or we may have physical manifestations of trauma. Some people may have bedwetting, or you may really experience physical sickness because of trauma that you just have never worked through.
Exactly. And I know through COVID in the Black community, we had more comorbidities and more issues, and primarily because of our trauma. So things like diabetes, heart disease, all of those, high blood pressure, all have to do with, a lot of it has to do with us not resolving our trauma. So I want to say for the audience, take care of your blood pressure, your diabetes and gout or whatever you have that's out there, because those are can be specific trauma related things. So thank you for that, Chantel. And so now, do you want to say something else?
Chantel.
Oh. I'm sorry, Ariel.
No, you're good.
Okay, so let's go ahead and jump into the conversation. So I'm going to go straight here, and we're not going to talk about Will Smith, but we have to at least address some of the outcomes. I really want to get your perspective on this concept of Uncle Fluffy. So Will Smith, as we know, spent decades radiating boundless likability, right? And he's always had a friendly, kind of almost goofy image that was really kind of like it appears to be a facade, which honestly, we all have that, right? We all know what it feels like to be in rooms and spaces and places where people aren't like us. And so the Uncle Fluffy concept is about this persona that keeps us safe and accepted in the mainstream world. And it causes us to code switch often because we walk into the rooms and we either want to get the job or we want to do whatever. So we go ahead and sort of show up in a certain way to make that happen. And if you do that over and over and over and over again, and it's really not who you are, things like what happened with Will Smith can happen. So can you all each kind of describe for us a situation like, how has your uncle or Aunt Fluffy impacted your trajectory as an artist? Have you walked into, that thing where you code switch? This is who I am, Jamal. This is who I am, Chantel. But then you turn around and one day you realize I can't do this anymore. Or maybe you don't realize that you can't do it anymore. Give me an example of when that's happened to you, and has it impacted you at all? Jamal's laughing.
All right, so I can start that. There have been various jobs that I've been on that has impacted me. I think one of the first biggest jobs that I was on, I was dancing on season 1 for World of Dance, JLo show, Neo show, and we're with all of them, and I started to see how things were gonna go, and we were supposed to have our checks and everything the first day, and I was told that we didn't recognize that Martin Luther King was an actual holiday, so your checks aren't here. And it would take a long time to process because we didn't know that the banks actually recognize this as an actual holiday. And that affected me. And I said, like, do you not go to the bank on this day? Or I don't know, because we turned in everything in November. So that was definitely like a heartfelt thing for me. But then like numerous jobs that I've done after that where the artists had the capability to control in terms of what they saw was going to come to pass with how I was getting paid. And for those of you who don't know, I'm a dancer, I choreograph, I do multiple things. And that became very, very hard for me to navigate like what I was going to do in terms of this career, because you have to figure out how you're going to live, but how are you going to stay on the job and like be present? Like, how are you going to carry yourself well? Because when I go on a job, they don't just see me as, oh, he's a dancer, he's here. Oh, he's a choreographer. They see you as like, oh, he's a Black man first.
Right.
And so I had to recognize I am that first, then a dancer and a choreographer, but I'm also replaceable in this industry because you're going to find someone else who's going to do this and be a yes man for you instead of giving you the quality of what I do.
So that's the part of Uncle Fluffy, right? Because you know that if you're not a yes man, that someone else might be willing to your point, you're replaceable. So so did you show out? I'm curious, like what, did you like show out a little bit about the money or what happened?
So for the World of Dance thing, I was like, what y'all got me in here doing? I was like, all right, so I'm gonna step out. Y'all handle this because this
I'm getting ready to, exactly.
But that did happen for me when I was choreographing for Beyonce's Homecoming, and I did have to confront her team on a lot of things. And I was like, hey, like, this is what I was told. This is not what's happening. This is what I was doing. This is not what's happening. And I had to have a lot of conversations that were very uncomfortable for me. And I knew that could be on the verge of me losing my job. I knew I could be irreplaceable. I saw people be irreplaceable. I saw people be irreplaceable. And I had to say, like, at the end of the day, am I going to tell my family? Am I going to tell my kids? Am I going to tell anyone that I did something that was integrity, or that I did what I had to do to pay rent? And
Jamal, thank you for that, because that's the part of trauma that we all carry being Black, is that that trying to always, even in your mind, think about what you're going to say and how you're going to say it, and then having to calculate all the way down the line what the impact might be. And that's a lot of fast thinking and things that produce stress. Totally. So who else has felt like you've had to be an uncle or Aunt Fluffy because you were replaceable, or anyone else feel that way? If not, tell us about your Uncle Aunt Fluffy.
I think I've felt that way quite a few times in a lot of different spaces. And I really think it is like, trauma that has been carried over from many generations. And I think that with where I come from, it is very much like we'll show out first and then fix it later. And then I had to learn to kind of like think through all of my processes first. But like you said, like having to think through all of those steps constantly all the time, that is draining, that is so stressful. And then, when I walk into a room, when I walk into a room, I am seen as a Black man first. So it's always that, having to be conscious of that and having to keep in the back of your brain of however you react, how is that going to be taken? So having to think about, think through that process of how to say things and how to react to things and how to do this and how to do that. Because if I make one small misstep, I'm looked at as the angry Black man, or I'm looked at as the...
Sorry, go ahead, Anthony. Yeah. And you're doing all of that. Yeah, you're doing all of that while you're trying to do whatever the job is. That's what makes it really interesting too, and then compounds the trauma. Totally. What about you, Chantel?
I'm not gonna keep you. I don't have a uncle or auntie Fluffy. I don't have that person. I don't code switch if I do. And it's something that I actively work with my therapist on. Is just like I say things assertively. I am a business person. I am a professional. I recognize that I'm a woman in a workplace. I recognize that I look younger in a workplace. But I'm going to tell you how I feel, because if I passive aggressive or if I hold back, that causes me more stress than me just saying what I have to say and figuring it out later. So I don't do that. And I'm very proud that I don't do that. I remember my dad told me when I was younger, I went over to some family members' houses and it was a mixed environment. I didn't grow up in a mixed environment. I'm from the South Side of Chicago. I went to an all Black school. I didn't have to socialize with, my white peers until I was in college. And so I remember him telling me when I was younger, don't change yourself to be like them. Make them try to be like you. And that's something that I always go to. And when I'm working with my therapist, I'll just say, hey, this conversation went left. I'm going to actually read you the messages. I said this person said that, like, did I do something wrong? Can I have said something better? I really leverage my therapist in that way to kind of partner with me on my communication and, work on what other people may be thinking. But she encourages me like, yeah, no, you did right. So yeah, I don't code switch.
You don't have and you know what? And you're my girl, because I'm from Brooklyn and I have kind of the same. It used to be perceived as a problem. Right. I've over time, figured out how to do it, but I must speak my truth. And the other thing I want everyone to get what Chantel said. She uses her therapist to help her be who she really is. And that's the value of therapy. And then that way you learn, instead of having to think through all those steps in advance, you have the tools and you have the understanding of yourself so that you don't have to do that as much. That reduces the stress, then it reduces the trauma. So thank you so much for that. And as we wrap up this question, Ariel, what about you as a therapist? How do you get through all of this? Do you have an Aunt Fluffy?
Well, as I was listening to everyone else speak, it just reminded me like of a specific client who is an actress trying to preserve like identity, but like is in the industry, and she faces the same thing. And it's like an inner turmoil of like, do I just keep going with this persona, or can I just be myself? But if I be myself, then people may look at me a certain way, or like I may get like judged and things like that. So it's just like in doing that work with her and realizing that if you always like have that persona on, in a way, is suppressing a lot, right? And so when something happens, it's going to be a case where it's just too much, and that's when the explosion happens.
Right, you have the meltdown, and all of a sudden, then your subconscious takes over because you become a robot, and
Right.
you're like just doing what your subconscious is telling you to do, which is always very dangerous if it's not who you are, or if it is who you are but you've been hiding. So we know we all stuff our trauma because of the reasons we've just described. And so given that, and we talk about the work that you all do where art imitates life, right? You're doing really serious work about the reality of Black life in America. And so given that, do you believe that artists have a social responsibility? And if so, what is it? And if not, why not? Jamal, looks like you're going to say something again first. Go ahead.
I do think that we do have a social responsibility, and it's not based on color, gender, age, whatever that may be. If I'm dealing with an age group or I'm dealing with a smaller age group or whatever, I do have a responsibility to share what I think will be impactful. So for me, like I wrote a children's book, Black Boys Dance Too. And that's me saying like, hey, like encouraging Black men in the Black culture to be okay dancing, to be okay
No, because that hasn't been the case. Yeah.
And to love who you are, like to love that this is a God-given talent. And I think that a lot of times we have to be able to express like, hey, this is my view, this is how I see things. And that helps heal like a lot of people because there are so many people who just aren't willing to speak towards what you are willing. Like everybody's not trying to be the Martin Luther King, the MLK. Right. And so when you're that in your community or the world or the nation or the whatever, it's a powerful thing because in a spiritual sense, even if it's one seed that is planted, that seed can grow a great tree that might impact so many lives. And so even if you think your message isn't being heard, I think that that's very important because someone is listening.
Right. If you touch one person, you never know what that one person can go and do as well. That's pretty powerful. Who else thinks this is a social responsibility of artists? That you have a social responsibility?
I think to a degree there is a social responsibility, but I think that the responsibility lies in whatever story you're telling to be sure to tell the truth in that story. Because like you said, when you're people are watching the work that you put out, you are planting seeds in people's lives. And so to be able to plant or to be able to walk in the truth of what that story is and not to compromise what that story is, then I think that's where the social responsibility lies. Because there are many different viewpoints in the world. There are many different, things that can be tied into a story, but not every story has to end with a pretty little bow on it, which is not, the honest.
But that's not life, right? Really?
Right. So I think if you move forward with anything that we do as artists, our social responsibility is to just be honest in the work that we put out.
That's so true. Anyone believe that it's not your responsibility?
I don't believe it. I think it's a nice to have, but a lot of artists they use a different part of their brain, and that's not what we want from them. We don't need to hear everybody on the soapbox. Everybody does not add value to every conversation. So if it really leads to the previous point, if it's something that you are seriously passionate and knowledgeable about, and it can actually leverage your influence in an impactful way, in a meaningful way when you're sincere, instead of trying to culture vulture or, just hop onto a bandwagon, then it's not necessary. I think just be true to your art and true to your voice. And if you have something to add, then for sure. But if you don't let someone push you into a direction when that's not your jam.
That's a great point. And even if you just want celebrity status, but in my work around imagination, I talk a lot about creating meaning. And creating meaning means that, let's do something, but let's make a difference and have a direction. And if not, that's okay. But then leave people alone. Just do your thing in your corner and you'll be fine. That's a great perspective, Chantel. Ariel, do you have anything to add?
No, I would just say it's definitely a platform. If we think about like various forms, like for artists, entertainment, whether that be performances or movies or shows, it's definitely a good platform to be able to spread a message, and for like the viewers to glean something from it. But Chantel did bring up a good point, because before I was like, yeah, and I'm like, that's true. We may not want to hear what everybody has to say.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I kind of also feel like it's based on your definition of responsibility. Like, how much as a person are you willing to take on responsibly? Like, I may be like, I'll take on my classroom. I may take on a school. I may take on a district. So, I feel like that's how God created you. Is like, what is the majority of responsibility you can take on to change effectively?
Man, that's a really good point, because we're talking about, in a way, a lot of artists talk about their art healing, that art heals, right? And as I do expressive arts, and as a psychologist, we know that art can heal, but people go to training for that. Specifically when we're trying to heal, because we're talking about the mind, the brain, and trauma, and all that stuff. So if people feel that their art heals, but we know that as people we project, and what that means is that pretty much we project our trauma and wounds onto others. And projection is something like, okay, I can say, Chantel, you look fat, but what I'm really saying is, I feel bad. I look fat.
You ain't have to laugh that hard over there.
No, I'm talking about, or
it's so different. If I tell you what's going on, you would be like, this is so different, but keep going.
No, but you project. So I might have made Chantel feel some kind of way, but that message was really about me. And that's the same in the art, where a lot of times we project our trauma within our art. And so are we healing ourselves? Or are we healing other people? Or are we doing both? What do you guys think?
Okay, so before you go into that, I have to say, like, I'm not laughing at anybody for that. I'm saying I'm in Jamaica for work, right? And I'm here filming, I'm recording, I'm doing a lot of different things, dancing, whatever. And that was a conversation where a woman said to her best friend, hey, I'm worried about your health. And she was worried about someone else's health. But what she heard was, you're calling me and my family obese.
Right.
And that wasn't the conversation. And it went so left. And I was like, wow, that's amazing, because sometimes it is based on what we hear. And a lot of times the projection is based on what we see and what we want to hear.
And what we experience. It's our trauma talking too. It's our experience. Mm-hmm. And we basically, our internal talking, speaking to ourselves gets projected outside in our behavior and in our words. And so, what do you guys think? I mean, are we, as artists, do you believe that your art heals people, or are you healing yourself? Or are you doing both?
I think that my art heals people.
I
think that my art heals people. And I didn't think that for a while. At first, I thought I was healing myself, being a Black male who went through a lot of trauma, being a dancer, and that was that. But I taught a class last week, or a week and a half ago, and it was over 67 kids in there, and they were all boys. And they were, oh, bro, like, what's up, man? Like, who your favorite basketball player? Who your favorite? And I'm answering all the questions. I was like, I still play sports, but I dance as well. And the teachers were like, we cannot break through to them. And the kids were so over me in terms of what I was talking about dance. And I was like, yo, the baby, Beyonce. And I was naming everybody I work for. And that excited them. They were like, yeah. And they got so excited. And then I taught them a dance. And by the end of the class, like, those kids were backflips, moonwalking, like Usher. They were doing stuff. And I was like, wow, like, this is really something that's therapeutic for them, because dance is also something that removes the trauma. Like, our body, like, if somebody hits you, you're holding on to that trauma here. So if I point, you're going to kind of jerk, because you think I'm doing something that your body has held on to. And they were letting they were just going. And I
They
had a
were
few
being
boys.
free, right? They were being free.
Yeah.
And the other thing you're mentioning, Jamal, I don't know if many people know this, that yes, if you move your body, whether it's dance, so there's dance therapy that does movement. If you work out, that
Yeah.
also reduces the stress and releases the trauma. So that's a really good point. Let's hear someone else talk about their opinion about if art, are you healing yourself, others, neither, both? What's happening, Anthony?
I feel like with my art, I'm healing both, and I can say that because I've seen it happen in real time. The feature film that I released called Thicker Than Blood, I released it back in a number of years ago. So writing that was a healing process for me. You know, it met a lot of intersections. It was a story that was told from the Black family point of view, the LGBT point of view, and also from the point of view of faith. All of which I come from being somebody who was raised in the South. And so when I was writing and developing that, I actually did a lot of talking with my mom, talking with my therapist. So it was like a healing process for me. And then jump to when we released it and we're doing screenings all across the country and doing talkbacks and Q&As afterwards. I get people that come up to me and they're saying, this was my mom, this was my dad, I was in this situation, I never thought about this. And so they talked about how it really touched and connected with them. And a story that sticks with me most recently is probably a couple of months ago, somebody saw the movie for the first time. And they said that right before they watched it, they were actually going to go home to see their dad, who they had a troubling, turbulent relationship with, but they didn't go. And then they ended up watching my film, and they said that it talks about everything about the reasons why they didn't go. And it sent them down the rabbit hole of like doing their own self-healing. And then I talked to him a couple of weeks later, and I was like, hey, what you doing? He's like, I'm packing up my bag. I'm getting ready to go see my dad. And I was like, what? Last time I talked to you, you said you were not going to hop on the road. And he's like, yeah, I've been sitting with this, and it really just like did something to me. So now I feel like I have to go. So being able to see how it hit people in real time and how it changed them in real time was just mind-blowing.
You know,
So
thank you for that. Yeah, thank you for that, Anthony. I'm curious, Ariel, given your therapist, so you said something that struck me, and that's an amazing story. Thank you, Anthony, about they self-healed. So I'm curious, Ariel, how do you believe in the self-healing thing as a therapist?
For sure. No, even as the artist, like I definitely think as like an artist is healing in that process of creating like whatever it is, whether that be a song or a film, and then to share it with the audience, they can also experience healing through that. If you think about Michael Jackson, one of my favorites, like if you think about Man in the Mirror, like that was a deep personal song for him, but so many of us can relate to that, you know, like
Right.
we're all reflecting on it. So I definitely think that it's healing for both people, you know, even as I think about clients and like group therapy, using music, just having them take time to express, you know, in that way, like have that time for themselves, and then to be able to share it is like double, you know. So.
Yeah, that's cool. Okay, and my girl over here, Chantel, what say you?
You know, I don't know. I don't know if my art offers healing. What I will say is, for me, I don't put out art where I still have an open wound. And so, because I work as a producer, I work as the writer, I work as, you know, the talent, I'm sometimes directing. So I'm sticking with the project way too long for me to be re-traumatized and re-triggered every single time that I have to see the piece. And so I probably have already had some understanding or some healing or acceptance over the event before I can even put it out there to the public, because I'm going to have to stay with it for too long.
Yes.
But what I will say is it probably helps people to feel seen. And then maybe that offers some validation. But for me, I have to do all that healing work first before I even put it out there. And I like that as a storyteller too, because what I'm offering is understanding of different characters, not just my perspective. I can't do that in screenwriting. I have to humanize the bad guy. I gotta have people root for the bad guy. I've gotta, you know, can't just be non-dimensional in the story. And so it may not heal, it may piss you off.
Well, right. I love that. I love that because you're being true to the art.
Yeah.
And, you know, and you mentioned something that made me think about psychological safety too, because Anthony, when you're talking about someone self-healing, while that can happen on that topic, I think it's still important if you're going to say that someone or a person says, I've self-healed, to check it out to see, because, you know, there's different types of surface, like, okay, I got it in my head that I need to go see my father and resolve this. And the movie touched my heart. But did it go down into the real trauma that, you know, that you need to resolve so that you can move forward, is the question that I have. And so, yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, I think it just starts the process, you know, whether it's surface, whether it's deeper, it just starts the process in the right direction. I can't speak for him and how it was for him, but the fact that he was in one space before he saw the film and then a completely different space after he watched it, I was just like, okay, now you're on a trajectory to do what you need to do. So whatever that looks like for you, go on. Yeah.
Yeah, the storytelling is very powerful. Yes.
If I can say, like, I think that when I realized that the art was more so healing for me is I had 3 kids come to me after the class was done, and they said, hey, like, my friend isn't here. He's absent. He's sick. But can I get a children's book? Can I get a coloring book? Can I get something for my friend? And for young men to be able to say that, you know, in second and like from kindergarten to second grade, to say, hey, can I get something for my friend? Because he likes this. This is something that he would be interested in. It shows that there's a humanity, that there's the love, that there's a respect for, I get it, but I also understand like what my culture is saying. I understand what the world is saying, but I still have a heart, and I love you as a friend. And I think that was the most healing for me.
That's really cool. So talk about a piece, because you all are producing and doing really amazing, incredible work. Briefly describe a piece that you created through your trauma. Like, what did it help you understand about yourself? Like specifically, like not general. I want to know what thing you did and what part of your trauma was it helping you with?
Okay, so I'm just gonna say
good. He is.
This is the part right here.
This is the part. Okay, so everything I choreographed for Beyonce for Coachella was trauma. Like, not from her, but at the time I was retiring dance. I had been through so much in the industry. I was waiting on checks. I was waiting on money. I was everything. Like, my car was on the verge of being repossessed. I was about to lose my apartment.
Which is real as an artist and entrepreneur and all of that. So thank you for that.
Yeah, it was just so many things. I had to sell my dog. I couldn't take it. It was like life. I was selling my Jordans. Life was crazy. And I was packing up to move, and my cousin, he was on the job with me. Three of my cousins were on the job with me, and they were like, hey, come to this audition. They didn't tell me what it was for. And they were like, you take my spot because I already got it. And it was for Beyonce. And so they were like, boom. But I didn't know I was in there to actually choreograph something. So I'm in there and I'm like, okay, boom. So I do it. They was like, can you stick around? So I thought, yeah, I can stick around. They was like, you can go home. I left because now 2 weeks has gone past and I heard nothing. So I was like, I didn't get it. I'm going home. And I went to my cousin's birthday party. He told me that, hey, like, yo, they've been looking for you. And then I ended up working on the job. And the whole time, every single day, it was raining. My car got a boot on it. My car got repossessed. Like, I was so behind on every single thing. And they were like, hey, she wants you to make up something in 45 minutes. She wants you to make up something in an hour. She wants you to make, I was like, the trauma, it was almost like life or death. Like, if I don't do this, I go home. If I do this, I can still go home. But the traumatic fact is, like, I don't want to be in the place that I was. I don't want everything to be taken away from me because I'm waiting on an opportunity. Here's your opportunity. Take advantage. If she don't like it, she don't like it. And they actually told me that that was the first time in history that she has never changed choreography. Wow. And at that moment, I said, I'm capable. Like, I can do this, but I'm depending on my peers, people who are see me at the same level. I'm depending on their validation, and there are people who I don't know, people who I will never know, people who are millions of miles away from me who validate what I'm doing, and it's more than enough for what they need and for what they want.
So, just real quickly, briefly, inside your head, when you were going through all of those incredible things that you were trying to navigate, and then you were forced to create something in 45 minutes, where did your head go? Like, did you put it out of your head, like, or did you use it to inspire you?
It was definitely out of my head, because that's something that you can't take the music home. You can't do a lot of things. And I made up 8 sections of that show. So this is like, here's the music, go listen to it, make up something, we want to see it. Like, it's so fast. And it was also like, she's coming in and like, don't want to use that song no more, take this song out. Don't want to use this, oh, do this, do that. And it was so many moving pieces to where I had to be like, okay, like, you can do this. And it was almost like, all right, cool. So I'm a member of the Alpha Phi Fraternity Incorporated. So I was like, cool, like, be an alpha, be HBCU, be everything that you have
Pull it
lived.
all in, pull in all your ancestors.
Be everything that you done lived every day, shows that you never did. I was just like, do it all. Like, and that's where I was just like, you're capable, and people want what you have. People want you.
Yeah, I mean, bravo, Jamel. That is an incredible story and a great example of the complexity. Look, everybody struggles in life, but again, when you're in Black America, the struggle is oftentimes way deeper, because we have to navigate things, mountain piles of things, while we're trying to do something great as well. So, wow, that's an incredible story. Who else wants to share about their trauma and how it helped you, what it helped you understand about yourself? Because what I heard you say, Jamala, it made you understand that you got this, you got you.
Yeah.
That you will make it, however difficult it will be.
I'm gonna figure it out, or he gonna figure it out. One of the two.
Right. So as we pause, because and so I just want to say thank you, Jamal, and everyone, because this is a deep question, and you're sharing your personal story, and so we always want to keep you psychologically safe. So just share what makes you feel comfortable.
Yeah.
I think I've been trying to figure out like how to phrase this, which is why I've been so quiet. But I, like the past 2 years, I have been working through a lot of like self-worth and self-love issues. And so I've been working through that by writing a new pilot for a TV show. And just going through that process and having to, and I did that actually with my therapist too, going through that process and really breaking down previous traumas, both in relationships as well as in family, and then figuring out how that got me to where I am now, but also how I need to get over that hump to move forward. I think just realizing that I am worth more than I was told I was, or what I felt that I was. And so being able to go through that writing process for the pilot really put me in vulnerable situations that was able to kind of like shed light on where I was. And where I was wasn't necessarily who I was. So to be able to go through that process of weeding out, all of that to get to the core of me was a thing. And I'll tell you what it was. Back in the summer of 2020, it was like the worst summer I had. Long story short, my identity was stolen. So my bank accounts were hacked, my emails were hacked, and my social medias all hacked, and they cleaned out everything. And so I was left, talk about rock bottom, at the bottom of the barrel, had nowhere to run but to God's feet and say, like, this is all on you. There's nothing I can physically do. Like, I just can't. So that was the catalyst of me really figuring out who I was. And that was figuring out who I was in him and not who people told me that I was. So that really was like the catalyst of me really learning to love myself and to learn to respect myself and to learn what my worth was. And so I put all of that into a pilot and really wrote bits and pieces of myself into different characters so that way they could be expressed differently. because I really felt like I was like many different people. And so I took all those
And we
voices
are.
and people that was up here
Yeah.
and made different characters and just really expressed it through that.
So Anthony,
through the
that
whole
is
journey.
incredible. No, that's incredible. And thank you for sharing that because, first of all, sharing and first of all, hitting rock bottom is a really, really tough way to understand who you are. But oftentimes that's how we understand who we are. It's like we got to go there before we can get there. And that's really unfortunate sometimes. But, I applaud you for sharing this and also for getting through it. Just really incredible story. Thank you.
Yeah.
And so for the audience, I'm pausing because, again, when we are talking about trauma, it's important that people, when they're sharing their stories, that they have dignity. So as you are speaking to people and you realize they have trauma, part of it is to sit with them, and to be with them, and to give them space and time to share. And so that's what's happening now, because this is, a very serious question. And so anyone else want to share?
So for me, one of the things that I faced as a child growing up was that I lived in a household with someone who did suffer from severe mental illness. And so I faced ongoing traumatic experiences well throughout my early adulthood in regards to that matter. And it completely shaped my perspective. It made me have a deeper level of empathy for people when they're talking about their mental health challenges and all the disparities that they face, what their families may face, how it impacts their interpersonal relationships. I just think about it very completely differently than someone who may have no experience with that. So around 2018, and I remember it was in the good old Facebook days. I remember it like it was yesterday. The conversation was ongoing about racism. And it was this big debate with people saying, Black people don't really face racism in today's world. And, you're not really oppressed. And I remember being very, very extremely upset about that and having that discourse. And then very soon after that, I remember traveling from work, being at a bus stop, and there was a homeless woman there, and she started calling me an N-word. She called me every N-word that you can. I mean, we were downtown Chicago, and everybody was just kind of like staring at me, and I remember just going into shock. And I remember looking at her, because if I'm very honest, I probably about to step to her. So I remember just taking it all in, and she kind of went behind me, and that's when I kind of heard the hysteria in her voice, the rapid thoughts, the nonlinear thinking. She was kind of like getting in conversations with every single person that walked past her. And though I was still angry, I remember going, "Oh, she's sick."
Right.
She's sick. And I went to therapy, and I started texting people like, "This lady, and she did this." And I remember, kind of working through it, and it was like, it reminds me of what I went through as a child with my loved one that I grew up with. So I made a movie about it. It was my first short film. I directed it, I produced it, I wrote it, I starred in it. It's called When the Leaves Fall, and it really just talks about that hard-hitting issue of the intersectionality of racism and mental illness that no one talks about. And I remember I just threw all these themes in there. There was police brutality, because that was another thing that she did. She kept calling for the police, like, "Help, please help me." Like, "You calling me the N-word? What you calling the police for?" But that's what happens. And that's the reality that we face. These people are sick, but they're giving credence, and our lives are put at risk because of that. So that's the art that I created. I made this film. I put things that I experienced as a kid in here. I put things that I experienced with my loved one in here. And it was a very, very complex subject matter. Again, I had to watch that movie, had to stay with it through editing, through trying to work with the music composer. So I'm glad that I had come to a place where I had some understanding, and I could be empathetic about that character and say, she was sick, and this is what led up to that event.
That's something really important to have a conversation about, though, how we we hold racism, because again, that's trauma and it's held in our bodies, and it's been held in our ancestors' bodies. And that's something that obviously is for another time, but a very, very important conversation. Congratulations on the film, and being able to work through and get through that. Thank you so much. So, Miss Ariel.
Yeah.
what would you like to add?
Yeah, the majority of the work, like mental health consulting that I do, like with artists, entertainers, and athletes around just like their value and performance, came from my own experience as an athlete, for years, and just feeling like my value increased or decreased based on how I performed in a specific game. And with that being said, just like seeing much of like that population struggling with that as well, and just like tying their value to performance. And that's when we see like a lot of addictions arise, depression, anxiety, when you're not like able to separate the two. And so that just really drove me to want to help in that area. So
Yeah, that makes sense. And so thank you all for answering that really difficult question. And why don't we just take a deep breath and let it release it. Just let that, whatever that was, go away from your body. And the other thing you can do, I always teach little techniques. You can rub your hands together really quickly, and that also releases stress and a little bit of trauma. So again, that mind-body connection is really important. You don't have to do much, but you do need to combine the two together in order to kind of just release some stuff and let it go. And so as we start to wrap up, let's make it this a little bit lighter. Let's go to something else, right? And so I love that so many of you have been hustling, interested in this creativity space. Some people, even like from 2, 3, 4 years old in elementary school, but everybody, each one of you told me that you had experienced or thought about being creative at a really young age. So talk about that, and how would you encourage the young ones, the really young ones, and the parents who have young ones? How would you encourage them to keep their creativity and imagination alive?
Let them be. Just let them be. I know that when I was younger, the thing that really inspired me to do what I do, on the acting side, I saw Home Alone for the first time and was like, what? There are kids that can go out there and do all this and get paid for it. I could do this. And then the thing that wanted me to actually make films was the movie Jurassic Park. And so those two films were the things that really stuck with me as a kid, and Batman and Power Rangers and, all these other things. And so I used to always run around just playing and imagining and just being. And so I would just encourage parents who have young ones to just really encourage them to, play with them, encourage them to be who they are, encourage their imagination, really feed and sow into them, because you never know where that's going to go. I am a big believer that we are born with everything inside of us that we need to be who, the full potential person that we can be. And so don't stifle that down in a child, because you never know where it's going to take them in their life, or what they're going to need, from their childhood to be able to do that in their life. So
that's great advice. Yes, Anthony.
I wholeheartedly agree. I think that kids are sponges. Like, there are some things that I never thought I did as a kid, and my parents showed me videos, and I was like, wow, that was really me. There's some parts that I look back and I'm like, oh my God, like I was super creative. Like, where's that kid? And so it is about never letting that drive go, never like diminishing that spirit. But I think the most important thing is knowing that whomever, we're all different. Right. And what is placed in our head is given from whatever you believe in. But it's given that natural ability of, this is my vision. So don't ever shut anyone's vision down, because it's not given to you for a reason, because it's not meant for you to execute, and it's meant for them to execute. So support is the most important thing.
Right, not shutting down the dream. Exactly. Yeah. Whatever that dream is. Thank you, Jamal. Excellent. What about you, Chantel?
Okay, wait, remind me again. Is this for the parents or is this for the kids?
Well, you know, however you want it to be, my dear. What is the message? You can do both.
Okay. I just want to make sure I'm staying on message. So if you are a parent, definitely just encourage your kids to be expressive and use their creativity as a form of their expression and as an outlet. That I think everyone here agrees that that's something that worked for us as kids and stuck with us for forever. And if you are a kid, then you are magical and you can do whatever you think you can do, no matter what anybody tells you. The sky is truly the limit. And don't let these grown-ups get you down. You can literally do, if you can think it, there's a way to do it. So just keep doing.
I love that. And I would say to the adults, you also can improve and increase and expand your imagination no matter how old you are today. It takes a little bit longer, but with practice, you really can expand your creative mind. And that is so important for life and for improving your life and really imagining, even if you're not an artist, imagining what your next career is or imagining the things that you maybe have wanted to do, but you haven't. So, Ariel, what say you?
Yes, I would just say find your form of expression, and then adding creativity to therapy sessions as well, like, is huge. I know you talked about before, just like certain therapists who may do dance therapy or like art therapy, music therapy. You know, therapy doesn't have to be in a box. It doesn't have to be just a traditional sit on the couch talk therapy. You can add different forms of creativity into the sessions as well.
I absolutely love that. And so if there's one word as we wrap up that you would say to the audience, what's the one word?
I would say believe. You really have to believe. If you don't believe in yourself, nobody else will. And it shouldn't be anybody else's responsibility to believe in you. You should believe in yourself that you can do what you want to do. And that's what you can do.
Anthony, believe.
I would say faith. Like step out on it. And faith it intertwines with belief, but having the faith that the impossible is possible. And
so believe in faith in yourself. Mm-hmm.
I would say vision. So just like listening to the vision that is given to you specifically, without letting other people who don't see the same thing deter you from that.
Oh, yes. So another believe and faith thing in your vision.
I'm going to say therapy. Big therapy. Go to therapy. No therapy. Be one with therapy.
Right.
Therapy, live a therapy-rich lifestyle, and don't just think of it as something that you have to have a stigma about. Literally use it as a partnership in your own growth and healing, and just know that healing is non-linear. It's going to ebb and flow, and there's going to be times where you're going to feel more hurt than other times. But as long as you have your therapist there and you can get on that person's calendar, like, listen, what you got next time? Put me on the books.
Absolutely. So, thank you all so much. One of the functions of art is to give people the words to know their own experience. And storytelling is a tool for knowing who we are and what we want. And that's really what you guys have been saying. And knowing who we are is not easy, but it's a journey that we must take because the trauma is not easy either. So I'd rather be working on something that's really hard, but I get the glory and I get the opportunity and the rainbow at the end versus just being on a treadmill of pain, right? Always suffering and really having not seeing the light anywhere. And so thank you, Ariel, Chantal, Jamal, and Anthony. You've been so amazing this evening. And thank you for your bravery and sharing. And I hope that you've encouraged other people to do the same, to really sit with their experience. And, the audience can write. You might not ever get the book published, but you could. The film created, but you could. But the fact that you just do the activity can also be healing, especially with a therapist. And so I want to thank also Creative Cipher, in association with Troy Pryor, Max Black Media, the African American Art Alliance, and Gary International Black Film Festival. Thank you all so much for allowing us to put on this event. Again, I'm Dr. Gloria Chance with Max Black Media, and our goal is maximizing Black power and advancement in business, politics, health, and more for the Black community. So we're going to see you all next week for part 2 on May 3rd at the same time. And again, thank you all so much for joining us, and make it a great, prosperous, and mental healthy day.